Welcome to the deep dive. Today we are undertaking a really fascinating mission. We're analyzing a professional trajectory that looks, well, less like a ladder.
And more like a series of really smart strategic pivots, maybe.
Exactly. Strategic explosions, I was thinking. We're dissecting the path of a product manager currently in Silicon Valley whose academic history is quite the mix. Japanese language, then economics, and finally computer science.
Yeah, it's a fantastic story. It really serves as, I think, the ultimate antidote to the myth of the straight line career path.
Right.
This journey, it's a masterclass in professional self-determination. You know, the active decision to go out and get the exact skill set you need for the role you want.
Even if it means going back, dismantling, and sort of rebuilding your academic profile years after you thought you were done with school.
Precisely.
So our sources detail her experience, starting way back as a high-performing student in Shanghai. Our objective here is to unpack the psychological barriers she faced, those moments she pushed back against expectations.
And those highly strategic pivots she engineered. It's about moving from this prescribed humanities track to a really high-impact technology role.
It's quite the transformation.
And what makes it so powerful, I think, is that the initial choices, they were really driven by social pressure, maybe convenience.
Yeah.
But the later choices, pure ambition, deep self-awareness.
So how did she bridge that gap? That's what we need to focus on, closing those knowledge deficits she kind of created early on.
Exactly. Let's begin with that initial environment and the power of those external definitions, those labels.
Okay. So she was labeled early on. Parents, teachers, everyone called her the classic Urchi,
Which translates to?
the top student in humanities. And this wasn't just descriptive, you know? It's a label in the Chinese education system that carries immense weight. It practically defines your intellectual future before you even really grasp the stakes.
Right. And that label reinforces the stereotype culturally that girls should study humanities. It points you towards language, history, literature, that kind of path.
And while her high school itself sounds relatively relaxed, she said they often finished classes by 3:30 p.m. TM. The pressure wasn't from school. It was entirely familial and really high stakes.
High stakes is putting it mildly.
Yeah, she mentioned still having nightmares
Yeah.
about being unprepared for exams, and it stems directly from that pressure cooker environment at home.
Wow.
She even shared this specific, incredible memory. Her mother threatening to leave home if she didn't get into her first choice university and major.
Good grief. With emotional stakes that high.
It's not surprising she sought the path of least academic resistance, is it?
Not at all. And that intense pressure, it created a crucial early limitation.
Oh.
When it came to choosing electives, she only picked politics,
Right.
which by default meant completely abandoning physics, chemistry, biology, essentially locking herself out of the science track.
She admitted feeling a little lazy then because humanity seemed less demanding and, well, it fit the label everyone had already given her.
It just seemed easier, smoother.
And this trajectory led directly to her college major, Japanese language and literature. She actually described this decision now as irresponsible, made hastily over like a single weekend.
Wow. But the rationale, if you look at it through the lens of, say, external economic opportunity in Shanghai at the time, it actually made sense.
Yeah, I guess so. Explain that context.
Well, she already had strong language skills. The region, the Yangtze River Delta, was just saturated with Japanese companies, over 5,000 of them.
Okay.
And Japan itself is just an hour's flight away. Add in her interest in anime and music, it seemed like a safe, high-employment path.
And it worked, didn't it? She got into her first choice university, first choice major. Smooth sailing.
Exactly. The system worked perfectly, which just reinforced the stereotype, you know?
So she arrives at university, defined by her language skills, defined by her ability to fit that humanities ideal. But then, almost immediately, we see this first major conflict emerge between who she was told she was and who she actually was.
Yeah, this is fascinating, how she divided her time. Okay, yes, she was studying Japanese, but she was spending the other half of her time heavily involved in campus stuff.
Like what?
Running the student union, organizing these massive events, Chinese New Year galas, mid-autumn festival events. She was actively building this whole other resume in leadership, high-stakes execution.
And those skills organization, managing teams, handling logistics, maybe challenging how things were done.
They stood in stark contrast to the curriculum she was actually studying.
How so?
Well, she quickly realized that the Japanese literature, the professional media she was consuming for her major, it overwhelmingly portrayed women in, well,
Submissive roles.
exactly, submissive roles within professional contexts, strong executors, sure, but rarely leaders, rarely the decision makers.
And that clashed with her personality.
Fundamentally, she described herself as outgoing, innately prone to challenge authority. It was just incompatible with the professional future her major seemed to be pointing towards.
That's really interesting. So she's studying deference and tradition.
While actively building this campus persona based on challenging norms and running really complex operations, the clash was inevitable, I think.
So the realization hits. 2 years in, she needs out.
Right. But domestically, in China, switching majors that late was basically a non-starter. Impossible.
Okay.
And that forced the strategic decision.
Yeah.
She had to go abroad to make the professional change she wanted.
And this is where we see that first really shrewd move, isn't it? Because her parents, quite understandably, suggested she just finish the Japanese degree first. Get it done.
Right. The safe path.
But she pushed back hard. Argued that doing a humanities master, something like East Asian studies or linguistics, would only make her path narrower. It wouldn't give her the fundamental career shift she felt she urgently needed.
That took guts and foresight.
Okay, but hold on. Transferring abroad, junior year.
Yeah.
That's incredibly complex. Logistically, right?
Yeah.
Expensive. Risky. Did she say why Dresden, specifically? Was it cost? Opportunity?
That's a good question. It seems her choice was mainly pragmatic, strategic. She was aiming for speed and, crucially, credit transferability.
Oh.
She needed a place and a major that kind of sat between the humanities she was leaving behind and this high-tech future she hadn't quite defined yet, but maybe sensed.
So she lands in Dresden and switches to
Economics.
economics. Interesting. Why economics?
Well, it wasn't accidental. It was seen as the versatile major.
What now?
Baidezwanya. It means, like, it goes with everything. Versatile. It served as the perfect academic middle ground.
How so?
It allowed her to leverage a lot of her existing general education credits. That was key. It mitigated the risk of having to do a complete academic restart.
Right, which jumping straight into something like computer science would have meant.
Exactly. If she had tried that, the prerequisite course load alone, calculus, physics, basic programming, would have added probably 2, maybe 3 years to her undergrad. Economics, though, it honored her existing credits, but immediately forced her to acquire quantitative skills. She was basically engineering a pathway to the next phase, not just solving the immediate problem of finishing her degree.
And this is where the narrative really shifts, doesn't it?
Yeah.
From external pressure to internal revelation.
Absolutely. Because pivoting to economics forced her to confront the very subjects she'd dismissed back in high school.
The ones she thought were too hard.
Right.
Or not for her.
Right. Suddenly, she had to tackle advanced math, multivariate calculus, integral theory, quantitative modeling, all of it.
And what happened? What was she expecting versus the reality?
Well, this is the critical psychological hinge point of the whole story. She was expecting probably failure, or at least immense struggle.
And instead,
She discovered that these concepts, the ones she'd written off as inherently too difficult, or maybe not for girls back in high school, they were conquerable. She could do it.
she had the analytical capability all along. But the stereotypes she accepted as a teenager had built this massive self-imposed barrier.
Precisely. And the realization that these math concepts were not as difficult as she'd assumed led to this genuine, profound regret.
Regret. How about what?
She openly described herself as having been silly, for prematurely limiting her options, for taking the easy path back then. She regretted not studying hard in high school, believing she'd wasted precious time just because certain courses seemed hard when she was, 16?
Wow, think about the magnitude of that. The foundational fear that defined her initial career path just crumbled.
Crumbled under intellectual scrutiny. It's the moment her intellectual confidence finally overtook that external definition she'd been carrying.
And that realization that she could handle the quantitative rigor that was the necessary prerequisite for everything that came next, wasn't it?
Absolutely essential. But the pivot to her ultimate goal didn't happen overnight. There was a detour first.
Right, the Apple retail experience.
Yes, she graduated with her economics degree, then spent 2 years working in the Apple Retail Management Trainee Program, rotating through different roles, HR, sales, visual merchandising.
And this real-world experience, it provided the final specific trigger. The motivation for her next big move.
Exactly. Because in that retail environment, she was on the front line. She was constantly dealing with customers struggling with what she called poorly designed products, things that felt anti-human.
Ouch.
Yeah. And she was filing bug reports, sending feedback up to corporate headquarters.
And getting ignored.
Consistently ignored.
Okay, so now she has the business knowledge from economics and the Apple training. She's got the organizational and leadership skills from her student union days.
And now she has this burning motivation. She didn't just want to execute anymore. She wanted influence.
She wanted a career where she could directly shape product design decisions, make things better.
Precisely. So she researched the roles that actually held that kind of influence, and she identified the product manager role, PM.
Right, and she noted that even back then, maybe a decade ago, getting into a PM role typically required one of two things.
Either a deep technical background, usually computer science,
Or significant business gravitas, often an MBA.
and she had the business fundamentals from economics and Apple. But she still lacked that technical fluency to be really credible in product design decisions.
So the strategic choice here is just brilliant. Because she didn't just enroll in any CS program, did she?
No, not at all. She recognized that her ability to handle quantitative subjects, which she'd proven to herself of during her economics degree, that was her bridge. She specifically applied to a computer science master's program at UPenn
UPenn, okay.
that was designed specifically for non-CS undergraduates.
That is the critical missing piece. She didn't just jump into the deep end with lifelong coders.
No. She strategically targeted a program designed to accept students who had already demonstrated strong analytical thinking, quantitative logic, but maybe from different fields.
Like her classmates.
Yeah, her classmates were mostly graduates from economics, mathematics, or maybe pure sciences. People who had already navigated that calculus and logic gap, the same gap she'd successfully closed during her first pivot.
So she leveraged her previous strategic choices to gain entry, to get the technical credentials she needed, completing the engineered skill set.
She was actively designing herself for that role of influence. She used the CS Masters not just to learn coding, but to understand the technical constraints, the possibilities, everything she needed to argue persuasively for her design vision within a tech company.
It really is the ultimate expression of proactive professional development, isn't it?
Absolutely. She took the role requirements PM needs business, leadership, and technical depth, and systematically used her education and experience to check every single box.
Regardless of how long it took, or how uncomfortable that academic shift must have felt at times.
Exactly.
So what does this entire multi-pivot journey mean for you, the listener, right now? She's now a successful Silicon Valley PM, we should add.
Right, with over 3 years' experience in the role. And she mentioned she's currently balancing that demanding career with being a new mother, noting her life's center of gravity has shifted towards her young family.
But she left us with one absolutely core philosophical takeaway from her whole experience.
And this is the wisdom, I think, earned through regret and strategic action. If she could restart her education, her single central piece of advice would be this: do not give up any learning opportunity placed before you.
She really emphasized not prematurely restricting yourself. Don't fence yourself off from subjects, especially the ones labeled difficult or not for you.
Because as she pointed out, you never know when the lack of that knowledge might require you to relearn it.
Or worse.
Or even cause you to miss an opportunity altogether. That lack of knowledge becomes a barrier later on.
The entire narrative just proves it, doesn't it? Initial choices, even those made under intense pressure, they aren't permanent destiny.
No, but escaping that initial destiny requires, well, immense courage to challenge your own perceived intellectual limits. And the humility, maybe, to go back to school years later to close the knowledge gaps you might have created as a teenager.
It's the strategic action that turns that regret into real opportunity.
Yeah.
It's just so powerful. Her journey required her to face down that perceived difficulty of math not once, but twice.
Right. First, when she had to take advanced calculus for her economics degree.
And then again, when she specifically sought out and applied for that non-CS-focused computer science master's.
Indeed. And think about it. If she hadn't overcome her initial fear during that economics pivot, she never would have had the confidence or, frankly, the foundational skills to even consider the CS Masters.
And she wouldn't have achieved her goal of becoming an influential product manager.
The whole path would have been blocked.
So we leave you with this final provocative thought. What is the single knowledge gap you currently have? Maybe it's a language, a mathematical concept, a technical skill, something you currently dismiss as just too difficult or not for you.
If that barrier you assume is insurmountable today turns out to be, well, nothing more than a self-imposed limitation, just like math was for her initially.
Then what opportunity are you currently letting slip away because of it? What proactive learning opportunities should you start addressing right now?
It's worth thinking about those lessons learned. Never prematurely restrict your potential.